We're recording now. Howard had a question.
Okay. Howard, go ahead and unmute.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Brandy. I was just wondering if we could have those reports so that the variations in the amount stored could be taken into account. So we'd get a truer picture of what's really going on, rather than just saying, oh, we've got a big negative because we have a big change in the levels. That would be the first question. And the second thing I just wanted to say, it's great to see that the collection system, the sewer system is doing well. And I think this just speaks to how great a job the staff has done over the last few years in tightening up the sewer system.
Thank you, Howard. I agree on wastewater, and we'll look into the water capacity issue that you mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Any other, I don't see any other hands raised. So Brandy, you want to move on to, yeah, thank you.
I'd like to comment as well on the progress on the water collection in the valley. I mean, the sewer collection, it seems to be much better than in the past. So I'm hoping we can still make progress on it, because I think we have not done all the button up we could, and but it really made a huge progress compared to the past. So thank you for the staff.
Agreed.
Okay, you want to move on to the aquifers?
Absolutely. So the aquifer level sheets are in here, the graphs, and also you can see on page 57 our log for daily aquifer levels. The average for well 4 for the month of December was 108 feet. And then you can see that comparison on page, sorry about that, 53. So as you can see for December, we're a little lower than we have been in past years. We did have a lot of snowmaking at Timber Creek earlier in the year, but we're at comfortable levels going forward, and certainly all of the water that we're seeing in snow and rain will help us with that.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions? All right, if not, let's move on to the item 9C, meter shed status.
So we do continue with meter shed improvements and getting in agreements for indemnification for people who are rated low. We, in the month of January upcoming, have one residential customer who is on the high list, which means that improvements have to be made. And then there are 2 in February. That's a duplex. And so we are in contact with these customers about the improvements that need to be made. I went out there Wednesday during the last major snow and took a look at it, and neither appear to be in current construction. They're all very covered in snow. So we will have to see if they are able to get their construction done by the deadline. If not, we will work with them to turn off propane and until they can safely correct the problem. As far as commercial goes, we have nothing in the month of January, but 2 upcoming in February. And these are also ones that John Campbell from our electric propane department is working with those customers. So we hope to avoid commercial shutoffs. I'm unsure if the residentials will be avoidable, but we are doing everything we can to communicate and try to make that happen.
Are there any questions?
It's not a question, it's a comment. maybe that's my oversee mentality here, but I think shutting down propane in the middle of winter is, we should have a moratorium basically to April or something like that. That would be my, I'm not comfortable basically shutting off propane to people in the middle of winter unless there is a demonstrated risk indeed with the current snow coverage load that we have. So that would be something I would like the board to consider as basically a moratorium, so we don't cut propane in the middle of winter.
I do think that, especially for the ones, I took photos when I was out this week looking at the 2 that are rated high, excuse me, the 3, because one's a duplex, and they are completely buried, appear to have had no one there. These are, you know, a high rated meter that is not, it's not like somebody is living there full time and keeping it shoveled out. They are a safety concern as far as staff is concerned.
Yeah, I would concur with you. Indeed, if these meters are under snow, meaning that people are not doing their due diligence for safety, then there should be no moratorium. Safety should come up first.
Right.
Okay, any other comments? Question? Okay, we're ready for item 9D then, propane storage and delivery.
In my comment, I was asking for feedback from other board members on this topic.
Okay, same one.
So to summarize, if there is no safety concern, that means meter being properly maintained out of snow, what do other board members think about postponing shutting down propane to spring, basically, or actually end of April?
Just from a logistics perspective, if I'm reading this chart right, there are 3 highs in residential and 2 highs in commercial that I think Brandy just addressed. And then if I'm looking towards next year, there are no highs. So would this even be all that particularly relevant given the meters that we have? Like, would you need, I mean, I'm just trying to think of the magnitude of the problem relative to what's out there.
It looks that we have 3 meters that are potentially, I'm talking about propane here, that are presenting a risk. And so in this case, I do not recommend a moratorium indeed. But as a general rule, it's not in the ordinance that we have. We typically don't shut up heating during winter months. That's what I would recommend if there is no safety risk.
I'll just offer my thoughts on it. If we just look at the specifics, these 3 homes are a high risk and they have had 2 years and generally haven't done anything. And I think that's a risk to everybody else. If we look at the 2 commercial accounts in February, they've also had a lot of time. I would count on staff to let us know whether, you know, there a few more days would make a difference or not. But otherwise, I think treating everybody equally. I mean, we've treated everybody the same, and so suddenly changing it for the 2 commercial accounts, I would defer to staff whether they think that that's going to make a difference or not, or whether we should just keep with what they were told and not change the rules in midstream.
2 things I'd like to say. I agree with you that it doesn't seem that we have a situation we need to take care and we could just let this flow. But saying that everybody is being treated the same is actually demonstratively false looking at this table, because why are some people required to comply by November 22nd or November 21st, 2021, or some others in 2024. That doesn't seem to me equitable handling. Yes.
I would
Yeah,
defer to,
I would
I would
like to-
defer to
yeah.
Brandy to explain, or
Bob,
sorry.
Bob,
staff
I'll
to- yeah.
explain that. It's exactly how
Sure.
the ordinance is written. So please go back and look at that if you have questions on it. But the date started tolling from the time we could ascertain that they had received the notice. So some people, we sent them out certified return receipt, and some people we had to send multiples out. This has been going on for 2.5 years. So that's why some of the dates vary. We set the date based on when we can verify that they first received notice. So if someone refuses their certified mail for a year, they get more time. Also, the time gets extended for those that are in the tier where they can sign the indemnity agreement. They get an additional year to make the repairs. So those people will have 3.5 years to have done their work. So that's why the dates vary. Everybody.
And the other
is
issue is when we
equitably-
actually did the inspection, they weren't all done the same day. Correct? Fair?
They were done actually pretty close day to day when we had the district engineer come out. He came out for about a week, Brandy. So within a week or two, they were all done.
So the starting point was pretty similar.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
going off.
I
of
didn't-
when
I
we
didn't
can
realize
prove
that.
they received notice as our starting point. Because if
Okay,
someone
thank
was
you.
out of the country and didn't get their mail, that's not really fair to them. So they may have more time, for example.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the idea of turning off propane on anyone. On the other hand, it would haunt us all if there was a problem of fire and explosion that we were trying to prevent, and it has been a couple of years for action to be taken. So, and given that these are all high risk, and I think we ought to just stay with the current resolution.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. Anything else on this topic? Then let's move on to item 9D. And Brandy, are you going to lead this, I think?
Sure. So this is just, as you all know, we've been struggling with our propane storage and getting enough propane here into the valley to maintain normal operations. We've been trying to communicate this out to the community, and I'm happy to report that we have received quite a lot of help from the community in conservation efforts, both at the individual homeowner level and at the HOA and commercial level. But this is just an item to kind of explain where we are and how we got here and what we're doing about it. So to start that discussion, as you all know, we have 2 propane tanks that you can see behind me here that total 50,400 gallons. For safety in propane, you can only fill propane tanks to the 80% capacity, because propane is both a liquid and a gas. And so on warm days, the liquid propane that's at the bottom of the tank expands, and you have to leave room for that expansion to happen. So 80% or 40,320 gallons is our true maximum amount we can get in the tanks. Best practices say that we should keep our tank levels above 20% to make sure that in heavy usage, we're able to maintain the pressure in the gas system. Now, we have fallen below 20% before. Historically, this has happened in 2012 and 13 during large usage periods when we had road closures that were extended, and also in 2021. But this year, we didn't have that same issue. What we had this year is a supply issue. So we our supplier has had, for the past few months, starting in October, they've had difficulties getting adequate supply of propane here on the West Coast to supply us our normal amount and all of their other large customers. So when we started December, we started at a lower than ideal level. Ideally, we like to start any big period with storms on the horizon at 80% topped off. We were not able to do that because of the supply issues and the difficulty getting propane here. And so what happened is that, throughout the month, we had lots of people here. It was cold. And there are some charts here that show the temperature correlation with propane use. When our tanks started to draw down, we had road closures, but during the clear periods where we would normally get 2 or 3 propane trucks delivered to us, our supplier wasn't able to give us those deliveries. So we ended up just kind of on this losing battle where we are barely maintaining enough propane in the tanks to comfortably supply the community. And on 2 occasions, we got down to the point where we were not sure if we were going to make it through the next day. We're dealing with a new set of dispatchers at our supplier who don't quite know where we are, don't quite understand the road conditions. Rick has been very good talking to them about, we have a relationship with Caltrans. We can help you understand when the roads are going to be open and passable. But we did have this last Wednesday a delivery that was canceled. Even though the roads were open, because when they are on their side looking at the Caltrans site, it says the roads are closed. And so, we have to go through that with them. What we have in our propane tanks is they deliver a liquid product to us. And it's approximately 9,500 gallons per tanker truck. This expands in the tanks to cubic feet of vapor, and it's approximately 36 cubic feet per gallon. This is a moving target. It depends on pressure and it depends on temperature in the system. So when we see things like we got this many gallons delivered, it is often difficult to convert that to a cubic foot daily number that we see. So we've gotten lots of questions about, well, how much are you using per day? And it's a hard question to answer because of the conversion factors. In your packet, there is a document that attempts to explain this all. To our best ability, what we've been seeing over the last month and what we see as our peak day, we have approximately 2 to 3 days of peak day use in a tanker delivery. So if we get down to a situation where we have less than a day of use, we get a tanker in, 3 days later, we're back in the same situation. So that's why you've seen multiple emails over the last month saying you really need to conserve, and we're trying to be not too excitable, but make people understand the situation. We are in better shape now. We got a bobtail in on Thursday. We got 3 tanker trucks in yesterday. And as we sit right now, we're at approximately 50%, 56% tank capacity this morning. So this is better than we have been throughout the month of December. Our propane suppliers have let us know that they have resolved most of the supply issues on their side. They're committed to making sure we get deliveries during our clear periods in the upcoming storms. So we're very optimistic that this is the turning point for us, that we'll be back in a good situation and be able to resume normal operations. So I just wanted to give you guys an update. I would be happy to answer any questions, and I really do just want to express how much I appreciate everyone's efforts to conserve and make sure that we're not in a situation where we're having to dig out every propane meter to try to restore service to the valley.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. We have a lot of people attending today. If you're interested in asking questions or comments, be sure to raise your hand. We'll start first to see if there's specific questions from the board. And then we'll move to attendees. I see 3 hands up in the air.
Just a quick question on communications. I appreciate the newsletter going out. I'm just wondering how much of the community is subscribed to that and getting that relative to like the entire population of our customer base. And also I'm just wondering how much else out there is like on Facebook or other, I'm sure there are other like groups that we could be posting to as well for these very critical situations. I'm just wondering on the comm side, if you have any information around that, Brandy.
Doug, I am not sure what the percentage is because our alert system is a voluntary system that we allow people to sign up for. Eric, do you happen to know that? Or Bob?
I can look it up while people are
Yeah,
asking
there's
questions
about
and get back to
5.
you.
Yeah, when I the last time I sent it was about 579, Bob was the number. Of
I'll take a look right now.
emails / texts that went out.
Like messages or like unique.
Unique,
Like
unique
I get
emails, cell phones, or a couple people opt in for voicemails.
So if I get all 3, is that counted as 3 in that number, or is that
No,
one?
I don't know how the delivery system counts.
no, it's not. It's 242 unique individuals that receive messages either by text or by
Gotcha.
voicemail or by email. And if they get all 3, they still count as one.
Okay, so that's about a quarter, a little over a quarter, a third ish,
Third.
like third-ish, quarter, third, somewhere in that ballpark. I'm just wondering if there's other, like as a,
Yeah,
it seems like we could do a better job of getting either this in, I don't know, I don't want to say
we
involuntary. necessarily,
we
but like,
periodically encourage people to sign up. During the Caldor fire, a lot more people signed up,
yeah,
but that's the list that we have. I don't know. We could convert it to see how many accounts that is. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's an open question how we can expand the communications. I think that's a good item for discussion after we get everybody's comments.
yeah.
Come back
And
to
then,
that.
and Brandy, was this posted on other mediums outside of that? Like I know there's the general Kirkwood Facebook pages and probably other places. Was any of this posted on those sorts of communication channels?
It was posted on our website with links to that, but as far as, Facebook, we don't have a social media officer.
I have 2 comments. The first one, I noticed that the propane situation was also broadcasted on the snow notification system, so which may be different from the alert system. It should be different from the alert system so that means we may have actually reached a bit more people because some people on the snow alert would receive it even if they are not on the emergency system. So that's first comment. And I thought that was a good idea to do that. I want to actually compliment the staff for the improvement in communication on that during that small crisis. At the beginning, we had very little information that was provided with formulation like if and when we get delivery, which is a bit alarming. But after these few initial message, there was a major effort that I could notice on communication, and it was well done. My only question I would have is basically at that stage, you are asking people to go on the website to check what's going on. I think we could give a little spoiler information into the message because some people may not be here. They don't have to monitor the situation as closely. And I'm not sure why we need to force them to go to the website.
Thanks, Bertrand. Other questions from the staff? If not, well, I'd like to move to the.
My question is, we had a critical propane shortage last year. And now we've had a series of them over the last few weeks. And, homeowners don't have really much action they can take. If they're not up there and they lose their source of heat, over time, they'd be concerned about freezing pipes and things like that. If you're up there, you're concerned about staying warm. And you may not have a backup to your propane heat and cooking source, right? Which is different than a long time ago when we all bought our houses in Kirkwood. I think we knew that the electricity was unreliable, so all the houses have propane, and you felt comfort. Like when the powerhouse burned down, I think I had 18 people at my house, but I could keep them warm and I could light up lanterns and candles and everyone was safe, right? But we don't have that sort of backup for propane. So my question is this going to be a chronic problem for us? I mean, if it happened last year, it may have happened in previous years and we didn't have the same notification system. So perhaps it happened and we were just ignorant and happy that we didn't know it was happening. But certainly last year we got a scary warning, and this year it's been a couple of weeks of that. So is this going to be a chronic problem going forward?
I mean, it is possible. You know, it depends on what our supply issues are, and as we, as the state and the country, move away from propane, it's hard to say what the supply of propane will look like. I mean, I agree that I think it makes sense for us all to look at multiple and alternate heat sources. You know, is there a wood fire facility in your home? Do you have the option to put an electric heater in there? Because in the same vein, during this event, we were very lucky that we did not lose power and end up going on to the powerhouse for auxiliary power. Much of the state lost power, and while we have the powerhouse that can provide redundancy, I agree it's a concern going forward.
So, well, I don't think anyone has an appetite to perpetuate the use of a dirty fuel like propane, and we've taken actions like we basically announced that we're not going to support new installations of propane in the future. I personally don't think a conversion away from propane is going to happen very quickly in Kirkwood. It's a difficult conversion. It's very costly. So if we think this is going to happen in the future, what can we do to prevent future outages? Do we need to bite the bullet and increase capacity?
So John, I'd like to get comments from everybody first, and then I'd like to return to that question specifically.
All right.
So let me see, are there any other comments from the board you want to ask? And if not, we have 5 people waiting.
Yeah, so the one comment I would add to what was said here is we said we wanted to have a program to incentivize people to shift from propane to electricity, and we are not moving much on that front. And I think we need to do a bit more expediency. So we actually have a system to, because some people would install currently mini split or heat pumps, and they'd like to know what kind of support they can get from the district for that. We have this public good charge that are collected for almost a year and a half now, I think a year and a half actually. And so the district need to come up with a clear explanation to the community on what is the program to help people to switch from propane to electricity. Also, maybe we could have a little campaign for people to let them know of the possibility to install a mini split in their house, a double advantage. First, it could be used as an auxiliary system in case of propane deficiency. And number one, or actually the summer getting warmer and warmer, and this mini split can also provide AC, and most houses in Kirkwood don't have AC. So I think we need to be a bit more proactive to explain what are the possibilities for people to switch away from propane that we have been the last year.
Okay, thanks, Bertrand. Eric, why don't we go to the our call-in people? I think they're listed in the order they raised their hands.
They are. Beth
Okay.
McAllister's up first.
Hey, Beth, please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Beth.
I think John Schroeder said my comment exactly. Are we looking strategically at increasing the capacity? Just to, make sure we're guaranteeing a reliable supply. I also don't see a switch away from propane in the near future. I've got, we have 2 furnaces, just put a brand new water heater in, and we have gas range. So, I mean, that's a big expense if we think people are just going to switch in the near term. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
I think Howard was next.
Okay, I guess first I just wanted to ask Brandy, so this Kiva that we're getting our supply from, where are they shipping from?
Different locations. Usually it's around Stockton. But during these last events, we've been getting even out of state from Oregon deliveries. So they are based in California. However, during this recent shortage, it's been the region.
Have we explored getting deliveries from somebody in the Carson Valley, which is the most reliable way of getting into Kirkwood all winter long?
We have. We have gotten a couple of a bobtail delivery from the Nevada side. Kiva is the largest distributor in the area, even into the Nevada side. So they've been driving around, but we have not found another supplier independent of Kiva from the Nevada side that can bring us propane. But we have certainly been exploring it. And if you have any additional contacts that we could use, we would be happy to take those, because we are reaching out to everyone that we can think of to try to get additional options for ourselves here.
Okay, and finally, I just wanted to comment that rather than look at increasing our storage, I think the focus should be on reducing our demand. And so I have a 4-point program to do that, starting with Vail Resorts. They have a formal stated corporate commitment to net zero emissions called Epic Promise. And based on the PUD's own data, commercial use of propane exceeds that of residential. So I would like to recommend that the PUD approach the Kirkwood Resort General Manager about them electrifying as much as they can and as soon as they can. They should have corporate funds for this purpose. And they also might have corporate resources they could bring in to look at reducing their current consumption of propane. And secondly, I think the Public Utility District runs a lot of facilities at Kirkwood that maybe could be converted. I think we converted some of the heating at the Community Services Building to a heat pump.
That's
and
correct.
I'd like to see us switch as much of our own propane use to electrification as soon as possible.
Yes, so would we.
Yeah, I agree
You
with-
said there's 4 points. You have others to cover?
Oh, finally, I think that we should be talking to Caltrans about improving the reliability of Highway 88 and putting in snow sheds on Highway 88, which would both reduce Caltrans' carbon footprint for keeping Kirkwood open, and it would improve the reliability of deliveries to Kirkwood of people and supplies.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Eric? Michael, you're up.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for all the hard work and the increased communication. I think that's been super helpful as homeowners. +1 to the recommendations to try to make that more broad. The unofficial Kirkwood and positively Kirkwood sites would be, those would be great places to post. I had a couple of questions. So it terrifies me to think about how many millions of dollars damage there would be if the heating outage took 7 weeks to restart the heating due to broken pipes and frozen water in homes. I think it would be a disaster for the Kirkwood Valley. I understand that supply is somewhat challenged on the West Coast, but nationally, supply is actually 20% higher than it was last year and is actually a national high for the past 5 years. So the first question is, yes, the West Coast has some supply challenges, but not true nationally. Very high supply on the coast in the Midwest. And so rather than like be multi-million damages in the Kirkwood Valley, are you also reaching out outside of our region to make sure that we don't have that disaster? That's the first question.
You mean our suppliers that are further away that would supply?
Yeah, I mean, trucking is expensive, but trucking is trucking, and the supply chain in the U.S. goes cross country all the time. I used to work in food, and a lot of the food in the country goes all the way across.
Okay.
So yeah, are you reaching out to the areas that do not have supply shortages to make sure that the valley doesn't run out of their heating source?
No, we have not. And that might be a viable option, Michael, but with the amount of deliveries that we need to get, the way that it gets to the West Coast is via rail, and then they truck it to us individually from their supply point. So if I am unsure if we would be able to coordinate cross-country trucking multiple tankers a week.
The food industry runs. It's not cheap, but it's how the food industry runs in the U.S. Like something like 80% of the produce in the U.S. is grown in California and gets trucked the other way. So there are constantly trucks going cross country both directions.
Okay, well, thanks for that information. You have other points.
Yeah, the second really is just reinforcing the question around like what is the plan going forward to improve the storage capacity. So I know that's been asked. I know you're going to come back to that, but I think that's absolutely critical here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the thoughts. Eric?
Sandy's next.
Okay. Sandy, please unmute.
Hi, everyone. Thank
Hi,
you for all your work. Almost everything I'm going to say is I just want to emphasize I think storage needs to be looked at because I think we need a plan because I do not think propane is going away soon. And I do think we need to look for other delivery sources. Hearing that our tank currently is at 53% and it can go up to 80, I question why aren't we trying to get it back to 80 again? And frankly, why wasn't it beefed up before the big storms and before the holidays came? To me, that seems like a miss because everyone knows that Kirkwood gets inundated with visitors during that time frame. And I think heaven and earth should have been moved to try to find deliveries from all over the place to make sure that our 2 storage tanks are at 80% capacity. And lastly, I do think communication got much better after the new year. I wish that we had heard something earlier, like around Christmas time. We had the 15th of the month, the message came out, but it said, we'll keep you posted as things develop. And it didn't sound too severe. I even talked to people around Christmas that said, I guess they solved the problem because we haven't heard anything from them. So, after reaching out, I found out that no, the problem hasn't been solved. So I let my friends know, keep conserving. But I think there definitely needs to be more communication. And I do sit on the communication committee and I'm happy to help or meet. Unfortunately, our committee has been canceled multiple months in a row. And I really think that communication would help with the crisis like this to keep people in the loop so that they don't, get upset and not that you want them to stay away from their vacation homes, but some people might think twice about coming if they know that they're not going to be able to turn everything on. So those are my comments. I understand you're in a difficult situation and I thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Sandy. Brandy, do you want to address why we weren't able to fill the tanks when the roads were open?
Sure. So that was through no lack of trying from our supplier. We did recognize that we had a clear period. We were at less than ideal levels in our tanks and tried to get deliveries up. But during those weeks before the bigger storms rolled in, they were able to provide the old tanker truck. We able to get from them, knowing they delivered a lot of large customers also. They are really small. They're cool customers, so they're not paying, which kind of trickled down to us in the beginning enough to keep us at the bare minimum from running out. I agree, not ideal. It would be much better to have had any bubbles at a higher level for the larger storms and holidays.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Next. Matt,
Justine?
please go ahead and unmute.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was wondering if you can provide more insight into our procurement process for the propane. Like, do we have a contract with you with required service levels and they're violating that contract, or are we just doing spot buys for propane? And could we pay more for higher priority service, since it would be such a huge catastrophe if we did run out and had broken pipes and all sorts of interior water damage and whatnot?
We have a contract with Key that was, I believe, last assessed back in 2016. It does not have required service levels, and in that contract, there was an acknowledgement of the difficulties we would face if we ran out of propane, and commitment from their company to, provide manpower if we had that sort of disaster where we ended up having to relight the valley. Kiva has been purchased by a different organization, as I understand it. The procurement of our propane, I just saw an RFP go out from Alpine County for propane services. It may be something that the board wishes to look at, trying to do an RFP of our own to revisit this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, next, Matt Jones.
Good afternoon. Yeah, a couple of comments on this. I think, immediately we try to appreciate the heads up. So we look at, given our use of that, we can reduce immediately. I think, and we should maybe talk about this offline. One of the things I'm mindful of is I'd like to inspect what we expect from my team when we put it out. We got our folks checking and make sure it's reduced, et cetera, but to the level that we can understand the impact of that, and if we need to go even further throughout all our buildings, perhaps that's something we could talk about offline, just to, if we're in this situation again, make sure we're doing our part. And then talked with a few folks, just trying to figure out if there's a way to leverage vendors that we already have. We are working on that with some other vendors. Interestingly enough, AmeriGas just dropped their service to us. We have individual propane tanks for all the lift jacks and patrol outposts, and they just stopped opening us. We have with propane vendors. We're now with KMPUD, but we'll continue to see if there's anything, company-wide, where we might have some larger contracts to help with that, just to provide some more leverage. But no silver bullet there. Howard's point long term, reading my mind, reached out to our promise team and looking at, okay, what are those investments we can to reduce our reliance on the propane. So that's on our list, and I talked with our sustainability team and looking at the areas where that might be prioritized based on usage and get the biggest the biggest value for that investment. So more to come on that, and I'll keep folks posted. But we're trying to, and shared with folks the other day, if there's any other ideas or thoughts that when Brandy and I talked, where you want to make sure that we're doing our part, or where we can help, feel free to let me know, because obviously we're invested just like the rest of the community in to help prevent the catastrophe.
Thank you, Matt. The thing I just want to mention that you may already be aware of, so we are just in to look at the buildings and what would it take to convert them. Send it to you, probably some initial information. A lot of those buildings are almost impossible to retrofit because there's only each one half one. But some of the other buildings it might just have to actually put in new things like but I'll be happy to provide that to you if it might provide some insight.
Yeah, that'd be great, especially with our employee housing units where we're trying to, change and impact behavior of many. Those are areas I'd probably put at the top of the list.
Okay, great. Thank you for your comments. Okay, Mark. Please unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Hi there. So I'm thanks for the all the background on this. I'm a recent and appreciate the communities of our degree, and so you really great venues to share updates for wider community and make everybody's aware of what's happening. And I wanted to obviously the issue and the potential for pilot lights to have to be relit and the whole thing restarted is something that clearly everyone needs to avoid at all costs. What I also would like to raise is the fact that there are many residents in the valley who are paying for community delivered services that are provided centrally, not just obviously through Vail, but also through the KCA, which have been impacted by this. And I do, obviously this is You know, it's luxury stuff, but you know, everyone's paying for it, and you know, there ought to be a way to ensure that those services can continue to be delivered as well, particularly when you know, if you can consider services being disrupted, there's a potential case for, you know, residents to ask for the KCA, for example, why that service has not been delivered, and potentially ask for rebates on that. So that's one thing. You know, how are we going to make sure that, you know, with 300 odd residents paying into that those services are able to be maintained effectively alongside the individual home number requirements? The second piece I wanted to raise is just that general point around the shift away from propane, which is obviously, whilst I think others have said, you know, it's here to stay, and I don't question that. You know, obviously there's a lot of built up infrastructure. You know, however, there are state mandated shifts that are happening away from fossil fuels, as we've seen. You know, the governor has weighed in on several elements. So I think that there's potential for legislation to come in, you know, sooner or later that would encourage the move away from propane furnaces. So I think it's in, you know, all of our interest to sort of examine that as closely as possible. And you know, encourage the values to look at education for possibly in the there are multiple parts of the city. West Coast seems to maintain a very solid, reliable grid, which is testament to what KMPUD are doing. So I think there's opportunities as well for you know, to become more revenue generating for KMPUD. For example, I'm an electrician here, as you probably know, the thing is down. I think that investment that could go in hand with what Matt and Vale were just about would be important. If there were to be a level 3 charger in the valley, I think that would encourage many more people to use that. It would drive electrification and use of fossil fuels down, and it would generate significantly more revenues for KMPUD because people would be using that much more regularly and would come here. It becomes a problem to get out of the valley. You know, I currently are sitting here with 56 miles on the clock and unable to get back to Placerville at the moment because the charger was down all day. So that's something I would suggest we can and figure out, you know, ways you can encourage that. Secondly, or thirdly, even there are programs that I've seen in other counties, such as, you know, I live in El Dorado County as well, and I've seen the Air Quality Management District there offer programs for you know, wood stove replacement and other elements that could be applied to, you know, the propane stove or propane furnace replacement, move towards heat pumps. If there were a way to partner with counties, that could be another element to consider. So just some ideas, and I'm happy to chat more. And I'm obviously I'm part of Vale, so Matt, I would be happy to chat to you as well and share my ideas from that side.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I don't see any other hands up, so I'd like to move the conversation towards what we need to focus on going forward. So to just try to summarize, you know, the fact that we got 3 trucks in one day on Thursday is at least a sign that things are likely to improve, although we have no guarantee of that. We have supply to get us through the next couple of days. So if the trucks arrive next week when the roads have it available, that will be a really good sign. And we have reason to think that will happen. But I think just judging from the amount that Brandy and Eric and Rick have gone through trying to get the trucks here, it's one of those things that I feel like it's show me and then I'll feel better. But I'd like to think it's likely to happen. Eric, do you want to add any comment on that?
No, my crystal ball's just as cloudy as yours, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So there's a couple of issues that have been brought up that I think we should cover next. The first thing is, right now, if we start out before a storm with a tank, you know, with its working capacity of 37,800 gallons, we have about 9 days. We have 9 days of supply. So in theory, if trucks were always available and the only question, the roads were open, extending the storage beyond that would get us further ahead. The other way to look at this is if we had additional storage, then if we went through a prolonged period of not being able to get multiple trucks up here, there would that would be an argument for more storage. But in my mind, the sorts of storms we saw this year, there's no reason to think it's a once in a century thing. And the consequence of running out is so severe that in terms of a risk mitigation, I do think what John has suggested is right, that we should look at what would be the cost and benefits and how much, and do we have space? So one possibility is to sort of move on that and try to look at, could we do more storage? What would be the benefit? What would be the cost to the community? And I think it is appropriate to have a board discussion on that topic. Secondly, in terms of reducing demand, we have a list of all the customers sorted by demand, and we'd have to get a pretty interesting number of them to move. So I think while it's a general trend that we'd like to encourage, and certainly a homeowner that has both electric and propane is going to be a lot better shape. I think we would have to look at specific instances of the larger demand and say what could be done there. There's clearly an opportunity to improve communications, which have been discussed. So I think those are kind of the questions for the board. And so let me move it back to John. Do you want to start off on that?
Well, I hate suggesting to invest in propane, but we're really not. By building more capacity, we're not saying we're going to promote increased use of propane, right? I mean, we've already said we're not going to extend propane to new developments, but it seems like it's a step we could take that's under our own control that can mitigate this risk. Other items like trying to get Caltrans to improve passability of Carson Spur be a wonderful thing. I mean, I don't think we can rely on that happening in any reasonable time frame, if ever. If Vail could identify some very large propane use that they're going to eliminate in the next 12 months before the next snow season, I think that could be looked at, but it's also something that we can't control. But we should find out, if they have the appetite to do that, what the impact would be on consumption. And if we saw a significant savings there, that might make us able to avoid a capacity. But I do think we need to put this on the front burner, along with the master plan, to escalate and prioritize that over some of the other services, and get us heading in that direction. Because if we do decide to go ahead with a capacity project, it's complex. I mean, you have to get the real estate to do it. You have to be able to locate the infrastructure. I heard the tanks are in shortage. There's a steel shortage. I imagine a mechanical engineer is involved. Guesstimates would be it's probably $1.5 million project. I don't know what the useful life, what we could amortize that over, but it seems like it could be relatively small increase in base rate if it was amortized, let's say over 20 years, something like that. So like I said, I would much rather be able to put money toward converting incentives to convert to electricity. I just don't think that's going to happen in a time frame to resolve this problem. So I'm not saying we should vote to increase capacity. I think we ought to prioritize the master plan and do a full study on that, and very quickly come up with a recommendation of what we need to do, and see if we can avoid this sort of situation next snow season.
Okay, thanks. Other comments? We have two more from the audience as well.
I'd like to
go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to support that John said that the master plan for propane should be prioritized. I see in page 65 of the packet is currently scheduled for Q4 of 23 and Q1 of 24. I think this should be elevated in priorities, and that's actually a major issue we need to. It's just a plan. So just knowing what you are going to do, then you have the time you need time to actually implement it. So it's really important that we shift the order of the master plan as shown on page 65 as a starter. So I totally agree with John on that. Commercial is actually a major use of propane. So I think identifying things that could be done next summer to try to reduce the load from commercial would be very useful for the capacity. We could also, that's part of the master plan, but we could think about having another tank next to Vail so they can tap on that instead of and being isolated of the residential, and that would actually make a significant improvement for. But anyways, this is just master planning here, but it needs to be elevated in priority. I think that's the thing that should be tackled first. The incentive for shifting from propane, we need to move forward, and it's been many meetings have been canceled, and we are not moving at all on this front. I think we need to elevate that priority as well. It is going to take time, but the sooner we can announce to the community what are the solutions, that's when people are going to start looking at what they can do, and it's going to take some time. But commercial, we could have a quick impact for next season if everyone pay attention and is motivated to make some improvement there.
Yeah, thanks. So I just want to summarize three key things in terms of the master plan accelerating is looking at capacity, demand reduction, and safety are the three priorities I think that were mentioned. Just as an aside, if you take our top 5 propane customers, they represent 1/3 of the demand.
Yep.
So a lot of it is concentrated.
Yep.
Doug, please go ahead.
A lot of thoughts here. I'm trying to remember a lot of them. So, I mean, I'm fine looking at the capacity option. I would rather see us think about the demand side of it more than anything. And if we're going to spend $1.5 million, can we spend that on electrifying and just pay for that instead of a new tank? Like, what would that get us? And think about that as options, because I'm going to spend $1.5 million. I'd rather do it on that than building a new tank, frankly. And so I want to make sure that those kind of options are thought about. And what are other temporary solutions that we can come up to maybe mitigate some of this? That I don't know enough about propane storage, and if there are things that you can, it's like electric generators that you can just truck in for a couple of days that might be expensive. And I know we're already paying a premium for a lot of the propane that we're getting on these shorter supply. Like, what can we do on this bars? And all the options are explored. It's not just how much it costs to build a propane. As identified, like new storage unit wouldn't have really helped that much here, and really. Like, you can't just buy a propane as a challenge. Have a tank, the whole like the matter of I mean, also I think the side where we're going as economy as a nation, because the world is away from the propane, so we have to smell it and have to see what
I agree with the we need to look at the production side on that. It's a full alternative, but additional capacity would definitely have a positive impact on the situation.
Yeah,
I think that is realistic.
I think it's maybe longer, but like that third tank's gonna run out at some point too. And we might be in a situation like now where we're not calling emergency, we're plowing through it, and you still feel it all the way back capacity. You might get it. We might have gone through some stretches. We might have early, now it's January. Like there will be stretches I think where we have challenges. I think I was saying like $7 million. I don't really know we're going to spend on the mix as well.
If I think about it, if it takes another 5 days, already, and if the same we can cut demand by 35 days. That's how electric utilities think about energy efficiency.
Exactly. That is computation I'd rather do. And I think the tank stuff. We prioritize just as I think we had 4 on top tank this year. Staff has been working on the second one now. We have prioritized the PDC funding towards the end of the rate year and trying to get the 2 talking on use out that we can get it down for the vendor. They're on the we cancel meeting because of staff availability dealing with things like COVID emergencies and things like that. So I think we'll get there. But I think a couple $1,000 for an owner is probably not going to be moving the needle enough. It's more of like where's the $1.5 million. So I think we'll get there. I don't know if it's important, but we'll get there soon. It's just staff ability to run and prioritize it earlier. So.
Okay, I'll get more from the audience before I go to that. You want to add?
I think ultimately we bite the bullet and increase capacity. Look at its strengths in the short term. I just don't see other solutions. We have to basically buy our own truck. The license to
I mean, there are other creative options. Massive electric contracts with the largest customers. We pay them to much. So maybe we make propane customers and say, "This level of reduction, we'll just pay you, and we'll reduce capacity, we'll reduce your demand." And a lot of times it's automated electricity, not work with propane. Just like measure demand reductions. So I don't really spend the money.
We can define it in the master plan. So we got. Okay, let's open up. Michael. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just encourage the board very strongly to not get stuck in analysis paralysis and make sure that the plan that you put in place be actioned on quickly enough to make a difference. My fear that's been reinforced by others here is that the demand reduction is clearly the best thing to do, but it's not going to happen fast enough. And so it's intellectually great, but it's not going to solve the problem. And if that's the answer you arrive to, please do it quickly. And then you're going to come to the conclusion that you must increase capacity and you work on demand reduction. The other question, and apologies if this was mentioned and I missed it, but You got 50% capacity. That was measured this morning. The tanks hold 9 days. That means you've got 4 days of capacity. That doesn't get us through the end of this storm cycle.
Well, it's 56%, so that's 5 days.
Okay. We don't have enough to get clear out the end of the storm cycle. What's the plan for this storm cycle? Do we have more trucks scheduled in, or do we know today that we will be in an emergency situation by the end of the cycle?
We're working with our supplier to get trucks in early next week. Tuesday looks like it will be a possibility for us if the break in the storm continues. So we're working on it. We'll continue. We're going to continue to remain nervous until we out of storm cycles, but we're in a fairly good place right now. Even with the holiday weekend, closures and high usage, we're shooting for additional deliveries early to mid next week, and we can get in with the roads early.
I just want to clarify one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. When we say 56% capacity, it's starting at 8% is the definition of full.
Yeah.
So it's 5 days.
But we don't have supply coming for 5 days. And so however you do that math, that we should be quite scared.
We do have 5 days, I believe.
Yeah,
I know. And we don't have propane
What?
deliveries coming for 5 days. I'm just calling out, like, the reality.
when it
is
was
what
full,
Ray is
when it was
saying.
full yesterday, when it was topped off yesterday at the 80%, was it topped off at 80%, Rick?
No,
No, I
No.
didn't get there.
we got to this as of this morning, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandy, I think you're around 50% total.
56% total this morning.
Yeah.
So we were in the low to mid 60s yesterday at the end of the last truck delivery.
Okay, so it didn't fully.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay, thank you.
calling out we are in an emergency situation. We're not good. We are in an emergency situation because we have roughly days of supply and expect to get the next truck for roughly 5 days. If that gets wrong, it will not be.
It's 5 days capacity. You know, at our rough calculations, we're somewhere between 5 and 7% a day. So we have, you know, a week's worth of capacity easily. And I don't mean to downplay your concern, because you are right to be concerned. This is just the reality of the propane system in Kirkwood. Like right now, we're in the best shape we've been all winter. This is a pretty normal place to be. I do think that we should all continue to conserve, but with our supply availability better now and roads opening up potentially Tuesday, Wednesday, we're in reasonably good shape.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize for everyone listening here, the 150,000 as a day is sort of the extreme scenario. And the last couple of days we had 85,000, 103,000, 80,000. We're still nervous until the snow's out, but we are in a better position than we've been for a while. We should be fine getting Tuesday. You guys? Eric, you want to talk? Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think I need to read it.
Okay.
I wanted to bring an idea, which is another reason that we just versus electricity. Our cost even for 2 hours, you get about 10.7 cents per hour. You're going to energy, versus electric rate are 22 cents per hour. So you can heat pumps, a couple, and you can convert people to electric. And the way a lot of the units are constructed in Kirkwood, you can't do heat pumps. You know, there's people with boilers in weird places and whatnot, where even if you went electric, it would have to just be resistive electric, and so you're going to top out at 100% efficient. So I was just wondering if there's plans to incentivize that conversion, since the rates don't incentivize it.
I'm looking at you if you want to comment on that.
It's on the planning committee's agenda for this fiscal year. So by end of July, that's what public benefits charge will be used. It is one of the topics that has been certainly discussed on the uses of the public benefits charges on the planning committee's agenda for the fiscal year, which is through the end of June. So we will have planning committee meetings in the next few months to already scheduled to discuss this, to come from the PBC directly. And then, as we discussed, maybe there are other funding mechanisms or vehicles we might decide as a board later, but for the PBC directly, that is something that is on the books to be discussed already.
Okay, next comment, Howard.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, John, you mentioned about ICS having a system at Kirkwood for 25 years. I mean, somebody mentioned already that it has a lot of heated furnaces, and so we're going to need to have some kind of propane system probably for quite a long time.
And Howard, John's looking at the depreciation time and suggesting a 20-year depreciation.
Yeah, I think that seems good to me.
Yeah, okay.
But again, on reducing the demand, I just wonder if there aren't locations within our own district facilities which are using propane now that could be changed out by the summer. That's why I also comment to Matt Dussing. The new heat pumps are getting more and more efficient. And I saw your analysis before, and I think the economics really are starting to fade. Even we reduced the electricity cost to 22 cents a kilowatt hour. I think at that point, heat pumps really do make a lot of sense at Kirkwood. But obviously that can't be done everywhere easily. It's going to be tricky to do it in some places, but I wonder if there aren't some places within our own KMPUD facilities where we can start doing that this summer. And I'm not talking about studying it, I'm talking about getting it done.
Okay, thanks, Howard. Caitlin?
I was waiting to be unmuted. So there's been a bunch of talk about expanding capacity, but I guess I'm just not really seeing how that solution, I mean, this has come around this again and again, but if we haven't filled the tanks that we have during the weather break we just had, I don't understand what the point of expanding capacity is. Like, that doesn't seem like that's a solution. If the problem is that we can't get propane delivered. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, you're completely right about that. Expanding it would give us a longer time period between road closures.
Yeah,
Which
but I mean,
yeah.
you know, when the road's open and we're not filling the tanks, then
And it doesn't help. You're exactly right.
Well,
You got it.
What you we need to do is top it off before the snow season, and if you had 50% more capacity, right now we'd have 50% more capacity in the tanks, right?
Yeah, it's almost like having a reserve tank that you keep just in case you can't deliver supply.
I mean, but the answer is maybe. I think is the reality that it maybe people are conservative. Maybe no, it would have to. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Is like there are demand side programs in electricity that I think are probably relevant here. That people could have been drawing down, and we'd be in the same spot and couldn't fill them up. Maybe a day or two later, but we would still be in the same spot. I mean, I'm against capacity.
Yeah,
and, like,
thanks. Let's
it
look
doesn't solve
at
everything. It's not a solution.
It wouldn't have it would help. I mean, it's not a correct impression to leave. And I too would rather not expand capacity, and I'd rather find ways to conserve. I think the primary thing is to get a master plan and get this prioritized, either find and identify a way to reduce. Yeah, if we can, then we can do that. It's something that can be done in the next year. That's preferable. But I don't think we can end up in a situation again and put the values.
Sandy has a comment. Let's go ahead and unmute. Sandy.
Oh, yes. Hi. One more comment. Maybe I missed it, but are we exclusively committed to the one propane company, or can we have suppliers to deliver to Kirkwood?
We're totally monogamous. No, we're totally we'll be happy to have as many as the way we have. No, we're not in any way limited.
I would like to throw that out too then. I think we need backup suppliers. We need from different directions, whether it be north, south, east, or west. We can't rely on one supplier who is taking care of bigger clients than us. That's not acceptable.
Brandy, do you want to reply to that? I'm sorry, Bertrand. Or Brandy or Rick?
Just that we have reached out to every wholesale supplier that we are aware of, and we have not been able to secure any other deliveries. It would certainly be great to have backup suppliers, but we are in a, like Matt was saying with the Kirkwood supply earlier, we're small, we're in a challenging location. There's just limited people who are willing to come up here. And so we'd be happy to entertain other options, but we've been trying, and we currently don't have any other options.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I helped secure the original contract. We used to be with AmeriGas. We went to Kiva because they provided better service and more promises. But since then, since 2016, I've reached out to AmeriGas a couple times to see if they'd be interested in entertaining another contract with us. I know that we've worked with other vendors such as Hunt & Sons, but the long short of it is this is the first time that we've had a supply issue. In years past, it's always been a weather road issue. So certainly more room in our tanks, or another tank will certainly buy us more days for the road and maybe give me less white hair.
Thanks, Rick.
So
go ahead, Bertrand.
The current problem is that we compound road issues with supply issues, and that's where it becomes much more difficult. I think, and I mentioned that last year, is I really like the idea that Rick just pushed here, is to have a contract with another person. It's not trying to find spot propane when we are in a crunch situation. If we have, I mean, even if you are small for some of these contract provider, it is a fair amount of propane. You are talking about a tank every other day or something like that. So having two providers with a contract, I think what we should try to aim for.
Good, thank you.
And just to be clear, because I would love to find this unicorn provider, but all the providers we got bobtails from camps, or the supplier from Nevada, they're all owned by Kiva. Everyone around us is owned by Kiva, even if they're subsidiaries. So you can say, oh, go get camps, go get Western Nevada propane. They're owned by Kiva, which is our main supplier. Now we're paying a premium because they're retailers, not wholesalers, but we did get supplies from them. So no matter who we go to, at the end of the day, the parent company is Kiva, or the one that just acquired them, some Canadian company, I forget the name of.
Yeah, but currently we got some supply from propane, so why not going to the Gulf? I mean, it's almost the same distance, no?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Going to the Gulf of Mexico?
Not to Texas, basically.
That,
because Texas don't have a supply issue.
but then we run into the driver issue, which is what another issue that's out there is. There's not enough drivers to make the deliveries. And then the drivers that they're out there some are reluctant to come back to Kirkwood after they come here one time with chains on. We've had that with a couple drivers. So again, we're doing and have done everything we can behind the scenes to get more vendors, more supplies, more propane in Kirkwood. And hats off to staff, John and Brandy, for thinking outside the box and getting bobtails up here and going, up and beyond to ensure that we don't run out. So, and we'll continue to do so, but it's going to be a challenge just because of our remote location.
Right. Thank you, Rick. So I want to draw this to a close. Now, basically, I think John started to put together a directive board, which would say that we want to accelerate the propane master plan, focusing on 3 issues: capacity, significant demand reduction, and safety. So John, is that a correct summary of?
Yes. Yeah. Very, very accurate.
Yeah. And I would like to second that. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? And Eric, let me ask, is that clear enough for you to act on?
Yeah. And the only thing I want to make clear of, a lot of things were said about going into a master plan. That's not what a master plan is. So there's 2 things that are being asked, and we'll have to basically separate them out. Master plan has to do with capital improvements, status of the system, et cetera. This things about incentivizing are already being dealt with elsewhere. So just I'll proceed with the master plan, but one option the board has is I can, regardless of them getting the master plan going, if the board wants, I can immediately proceed to retaining an engineer and start the design environmental process for a tank. But if the board wants to wait for the master plan to come back with the suggestions, then we don't need to do that. But just they could run concurrently. Just throwing that out there if somebody wanted to do that.
Yeah, I guess go ahead,
Peter. Go first. Yeah,
I think we're fighting time here, and we've been lucky so far. I think hiring an engineer to do the necessary requirements to increase our capacity is urgent, and I would move that we do that instead of doing a master plan.
One thing, Supervisor Brown reminded me that there's a company that just went bankrupt called Main Street Gas down in Amador County. So I'm at his good suggestion. I may do some digging to see who owns that, if it's still owned locally or not, because they may have tankage we could buy. But the bottom line is, everybody says we need to move on this before next winter. We're the government and we're subject to all of the government rules. So just keep that in mind, that we can only move at the pace that we're legally allowed to move at.
Yeah, I mean, I also think I'd like to hire an engineer to analyze the demand side of this and see what kind of things we can do on that as well. I mean, I don't know. I feel like just making a conclusion that we should go straight to the capacity. I don't know. I'm not convinced on that, I guess still. I mean, the prices, I feel like there's still other things that we could think about. I'm not sure I understand how we would jump straight to that, I guess.
I think we're suggesting that we accelerate an engineering design so we know what it would cost and what it would look like, and then decide to go or not go on it.
Was this done recently? I feel like
It was done in 2017.
okay, so does that not current enough, I guess, in terms of, the design itself, or what would have to be changed, I guess?
Can
Well,
we see,
Brandy-
can we see that analysis 2017 for the?
That's in the packet, right?
No,
I just quickly summarized in 2017, that the peak went up 180,000 a day. So staff did the analysis and this was 150,000. The drop is due to the fact that one of the large propane snow removal, snow melt, no longer operates. And that's the difference in peak demand per day. The board authorized the bidding of tanks. There are two bids. They're required to take a lower bid, and that was a used tank we discovered. Maybe you remember that I think the tank wasn't anything we'd want to cancel the contract.
I really think we buy a tank. I really do.
Okay.
It's not the ideal solution. It's really.
So let's represent this motion and do two things. First off, the master plan for propane, and secondly, identify engineering that could do the feasibility of having a tank.
And push it to one at a time?
Of course.
We also have an engineer on the main side, so that we can see like that makes a reduction than building something. I don't know.
I agree. I think we need to look at from the.
So we want to slide and reach this exact. We address this factor on demand as my best, but
I think we're wrong.
I
disagree with that.
On the demand side, if you take the 6 worst customers, someone would have, first of all, they would have decided they want to do it, and someone would have to know what to do in the buildings. So I'm not quite sure.
And not to be honest, we do it for you.
The demand side is the buildings to see what level of interest they can do as opposed to us having an independent effort. So let's start. First of all, John has made a motion to accelerate the propane master plan. I was seconded by Peter.
Yes.
Okay. So any additional discussion? And I'm going to ask for roll call.
Epstein. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mitterranda.
Aye.
Phil.
Aye.
York, aye.
Okay. The second item then is should we independently accelerate an effort to do a design for increasing capacity, as Eric suggested.
What the cost?
Oh boy, I haven't dealt with mechanical engineers in a long time. Let's just assume there's something similar to there's gonna be environmental component to it as well, because if we don't start that right away, then it's gonna be a mitigated. It's not going to be a categorical exemption, so that's a good 6-month process. So we should start that at the same time if we're going to do it. 60-ish, 60,000, maybe 40 to 60. Maybe I'm being too conservative. Maybe 40 to 60. Environmental, I don't know what environmental starts these days. They always bring 80%. I know it's strict design. There's a lot of steps that were missing in that one that were not kosher.
Maybe suggest that there be a motion to request identify someone who could do this and get back to the board with a price.
I mean, I definitely sole source it if I can. I know a few mechanicals. We could go try and sole source it. On the other component though, if we do this and do another tank, we have to incorporate a roof over the tanks. There's no way to do it without adding that roof, because the snow would just make it impossible to operate them in situations like this. So just keep that in mind. If we do add tankage, we have to add that because we have to manage where the snow goes.
Okay. Peter, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would move that we accelerate this engineering for a new tank as quickly as we can.
Maybe if I might suggest,
Sure.
direct me to solicit, and sole source is fine. Solicit a scope and fee from a consultant and bring it back to the board so you can look at the price tag and then decide.
That sounds reasonable. I'll move that.
Okay, I would second that. Is there any discussion further? Okay, roll call, please.
Epstein.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Mitterranda.
Aye.
Perot.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Okay. I think we've covered everything. I see Mark has his hand up. Mark, let me give him the last word. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Bob. So I was just sort of building. So I don't disagree with the capacity thing, but I do think there's more that could be done just to quickly encourage consumers to reduce, as well as the commercial properties. And I subscribe to several things via PG&E, Pioneer Energy, where they actually can remotely control my thermostat in my house for heat-related sort of brownout kind of situations, and that could easily be done, as a community-wide program. Google seemed to be quite willing to give away their new Nest thermometer, for example, thermostat, which can be sort of controlled across multiple properties, taking it down to a safe level, as you were saying, doing something with the major commercial customers and saying that we're going to reduce your load. You could do that with all consumers as well, which might encourage others to put more wood on the fire or do something differently quickly, and be a more sustainable thing. Because having listened to all that, I can't see a way that the delivery situation is going to improve. The capacity might be good to hold it out, but it does seem that, like a much longer term solution needs to be put in place, to me at least, just listening to it from an outside in perspective, to quickly reduce the kind of the dependence on propane and actually put a more sustainable future forward. So again, happy to put some ideas in that. There may be other ones. That's just one that comes to me.
Okay, thanks. Okay, it's been a good starting discussion. I imagine this will be regular going forward. So let me finish this up, and then we'll move on to the next one. Something what happened recently is to have everybody as needed. I will look at where we are on these projects and putting emphasis on operations. Everything's because yes, and so we can have one place to see where everything is. So we turn over there for to start projects.
Sure. So depending on this else, this will maybe not be Q3 and maybe Q4. We'll see.
Can you clarify on charge? Are we talking about fiscal calendar quarters or are we talking about calendar quarters?
Calendar quarters. Yeah. Otherwise, it was both years, 22, 23. So anyway, so with these, before starting all these other projects, I'm probably going to recommend that we defer the hydraulics and the wells further out. There's just not enough bandwidth of staff for all of the new things we keep adding. So I'll update that as well. Master plan electric, we should have first draft for staff this month, and then the final, hopefully by the end of the quarter. Propane, we just talked about that, that'll get moved. Wastewater master plan, again, depending on snow, I'll get that done. Water master plan, we're gonna have to kick that can down the road again, bandwidth for all the things we're doing. The Ogal's Park project, again, snow contingent. We'll get that built this year, and that's right here. For those that don't know, it's the picnic tables, cornhole, airproof trash can over here, just the other side of Lava Rock near the meadow, kind of at the bottom of that trail, the road, the cat track that comes off lower 7. Propane service line basement, that I think if we do the master plan, we'll get a clearer picture on when that needs to happen. But if we're going to drop, a couple $1 million on propane tanks, I don't know that we have the financial bandwidth to have that at that time. Vaporizer roof, we just talked about that. Wastewater filtration continues to work on the 9% plans. We're still going to get those the first week of February. They're waiting on some information from USDA on Buy American and American Steel requirements. And so that is continuing to proceed on schedule.
Eric, I'm sorry if you said this already on the master plan. We're expecting to be able to see that at the next board meeting for electric.
No, I did not say that. Because we'll have comments on the first draft, and I don't know when we'll get the final draft with staff comments incorporated.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you for putting this together. Then we'll move on to the general manager's report.
We've sure talked about a lot of it already. Tommy stole my thunder, but we are fully staffed, both full-time and seasonal. And definitely want to thank KPS, Pyramid Peak, and Vail for reducing propane usage during the crisis and reaching out to us with offers of help. That was a huge deal. The special taxes moving forward, we had to get to the bottom of the per square foot assessment. We thought it was a CFD. It was not. It was just an ordinance. So we're getting closer, much closer on that with parking counts. They are doing it with that methodology. They have to assign it by parcel. So we're having to break out where the parking sits across parcels. And some of them are not defined parcels. So it gets interesting, especially with regards to Vail and Kirkwood Meadows Drive. That's not an identified parcel by Amador County or Alpine. Well, Alpine does identify it, Amador does not. So how those get allocated, they're working on that. We've been meeting with bond counsel as well, because they're needed to establish the CFD. So had some good meetings with them and made a lot of progress. So we should start seeing something here. I should start seeing something here next week with the methodology and getting them the updated budget. So that is for that sits. That's all I had.
Any questions for Eric? All right, Rick, operations report.
So we survived another busy holiday period. On top of all the snow, we still had to manage the solid waste, and the crew did a good job just rolling the dumpsters out of, say, Sun Meadows and in the lodge just to get the tips done. There was a couple challenges of getting aces up here when the spur closed, but we're keeping up with it. Next week, hopefully when the weather clears, we'll actually clear out the dumpster pads a little bit. By doing so, when the dumpsters start to load up with snow, the lids the balance on the lid becomes more difficult because the back of the dumpsters are taller than the front. So customers can't really lift the lid very easily. So when we get a chance, we'll clear the snow from underneath the dumpsters so you have a nice flat surface, and just makes it an easier experience when you're dumping your trash at a transfer station. For wastewater, we did have a rain and snow event, which I don't remember what day it was, the 6th of January or the 30th, but our treatment plant did a nice job keeping up with the flows. We had a couple peak days, and to mitigate that, we did pump water to our black tank at the end of the shift, so we'd get through the evening without having our main EQ basin hit a high level alarm. We've since returned all the water that we've used in our emergency storage, and the only other hiccup we had at the treatment plant was our centrifuge machine clogged up, and staff did a great job mitigating the clog. And I think we need to buy a new knife switch for about $2,000 to fully fix the problem, but the machine's running, and our membrane, our TSS, our suspended solids that we're using to judge how the membranes are doing have come down and doing really well. And then finally, snow removal. It's been a challenging year. Our crews have been working 10, 12-hour days with 1 day off. Some crew members have worked 16 out of 18 days. We started off great. We had 6 tracklesses. We're down to 2 good working tracklesses. Hopefully by the end of today, we'll have 3. We have another trackless that has blown 10 fuses within 1 shift, but we continue to use it because we need it. And so consequently, we are, we like everybody else, we have equipment challenges when things are big and heavy, and but we're working through them. And we had a old trackless that was in our powerhouse that we've actually been pulling parts off of and keeping us running, which is really nice. We did not start the holiday season with a full crew, but I'm pleased to announce we have a full snow removal crew. We have a lot of new people out there, including some older people that we brought back. And so we're able to run now a night shift, which is really, it saves us so much time in the commercial area. When there's nobody in there, we can get in there, get it cleaned up, and get ready for the next storm, which seems to be like every other day. But other than that, I know that the office has taken a lot of calls, and we're doing our best to get to everybody, to make sure we get things cleared out. We do appreciate people signing up on the priority list or the residency list to let us know that you're here, because we will try to get you first, weather and equipment and staff available. But it does help us out, and you're welcome to leave us messages if other things that you might see. And I'm also really grateful for all the compliments that we received with snow removal. A lot of people have thanked the crews, and we appreciate that. That goes a long way as well. So with that, I open up any questions.
Okay, any questions for Rick?
I have a comment on the being buried in snow, and it was effectively very difficult. So I'm very happy to hear that you have a plan to try to improve the access to the bin. And I'm not sure what we can do, because when there is a foot of snow on the bin, maybe I'm getting older, but it's just too heavy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It could be both.
It's probably both.
Okay, anything else for Rick? Okay, standing committee reports, start with finance. John?
Finance, nothing further to report on, but I was wondering, given while we have not made a decision to increase capacity, it seems like if we do, it's a pretty short time frame to get that done. Should the finance committee start identifying funding source for a project like that?
Eric, I'm looking at you if you have an answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think once we get the scope and fee, we can start considering that. I mean, we have the short-term sources we used before, so plus going to buy I market too for members, so a few options of the co-op they're not clean for the state. That's not fully assessment.
No, I think you're the sources and coding person the recommendation we want to move forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely during construction, I was start now quickly. This next construction, I think that's the overly optimistic. I think realistically, we have it following summer. So if we make things that time, it's still better. Yeah, so that's would be the best discussion and assumption for unless we bother about these position, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, suggestions just getting these guys out there.
Yeah. No, understand. Yeah, I think I have a few that you could also look to as well. So.
Yep. So I think we had to cancel the last meeting and the next one just due to staff availability to work on the agenda items that we have. As a reminder, the agenda items that we talked about at the last board meeting, the special requirements for AMU decreases, the next ones that have listed standard AMU discounts, energy efficiency rebate program using the TDC funds, and fuel switching rebate program using DP funds, and then also the low income customer support program potentially using DC funds. So those are all things that are on the fiscal year agenda, and hope that makes our time for one.
We need to run those meetings at the holidays. We're planning on in February, trying to reactivate.
Okay, thanks. And personal, and then LAFCO and I were there waiting for the meeting to start to cancel it because the secretary had a few times for the meetings. So that's much. Item February 15th works. Okay. Does any board want to have any general discussion topic they want to bring up?
I might have missed this. Oh, sorry, John.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I might have missed this. The next infrastructure study.
Yes, we did that.
Yeah.
We should get the draft.
I feel like you said that registration.
Just reiterate, we did this last month, but it's, I feel like, and Bill Murray, we can understand what's final for February, but it's the same.
Sorry, I thought of that after the.
Maybe the last time it was just a.
That's right. That's like so much I'm missing.
I appreciate it.
Yes, I do have a few comments. First, I want to go back to the question at the beginning is why have we choose to do a webinar instead of a Zoom meeting? And I think for the point that there's not the same kind of level of access to the public through the webinar, even if I acknowledge that you did a good job trying to get people being able to express themselves. But the form is important, and I think this is a valid point that was raised, and I'd like to have some feedback on that.
This is the format that most other public agencies are using. It's a lot more manageable, and it's easier for staff to be able to run it off of this. And when we're back in hybrid, we can't do it with regular Zoom meetings.
Yeah, but clearly, in this case, I suppose the weather was an emergency. That's why we've been able to do that meeting all on Zoom. But the question is still valid. But I have to acknowledge that there was a decent effort to try to make sure I don't see. I like to see all the people that can talk about, and it's not happening when you do a webinar. That was my first comment. My second comment is on the access to the building. I think it's time to have the building open again during working time. And we talked several times about that, and each time we come back to the idea to push back. And I know that a bunch of people try to actually come to the building committee, and they're not able to get answers to the ring. And so my question is, when are we going to reopen the building CSB to the public?
I do not know the answer to that. We have someone to get back to.
My point is, I don't know of other public facility utility.
Amador Water Agency remains closed to the public. Now you know of one.
Okay.
It would be up to the board if they want to reopen that. It's been a board decision to close it and keep it closed. So it'd have to be agendized if the board wanted to bring it back. But I dispute the assertion there are many people that come that can't get in or don't get rings answered. That's just,
I didn't say many. I said I had a report of people that were not able to. Yeah, I think we should agendize that for the next meeting so we can discuss of the in and out of having the public community CSB open or closed for the public.
We'll follow up in February.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. We're now scheduled to go into a closed session. I wanted to make a change in how we operate to give the general manager mid-year feedback and not just always wait to the end of the year, particularly since some of the priorities may need to change. However, I am concerned about the spur closing, and Eric needs to get home in time. So I would entertain just finding another time to do that. Eric, I don't want to put you at risk of being on the mountain till Tuesday.
Well, yeah, especially with my wife being down in San Diego for her sister literally just had brain surgery. And my
Yeah.
daughters are alone. I don't want to leave them and I don't want to get stuck if I can avoid
Okay.
it.
So it's
But
not
if-
time critical that we do a mid-year feedback. So I will look for a way to schedule a time
We just do
where
it
you're
in
not
February then?
nervous, where we don't have to worry about the spur closing while we're during the meeting.
Yeah, I
Just do
mean,
it February.
we could do it February, or we could have a special meeting where we just open it up, have it
Yeah.
go into closed session and close it, or we could do it in February.
Yeah, okay. We will figure that out. And but I don't want to risk, I don't want to be the one preventing you from being stranded.
I appreciate that very much.
Okay, so I'll get back to everybody on a time to do the performance mid-year review. And with that, I appreciate everybody's time and attention, and I'd like to adjourn this regular meeting of the board. Thank you all for a really, really productive discussion, and thanks for so many members of the community being able to participate as well. Appreciate it all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dan. Time to go out and shovel some more.